Hello. Hello and welcome, and thank you for taking the moment this evening to come and support this work that I had a lot of help getting here and getting together. So before I go into anything, I want to thank Dennis for trusting me to bring this work here. And I want to acknowledge Bill for helping install pretty much this entire show. So thank you, Dennis, and thank you, Bill. And Andy, yes, Andy was here the first couple of days and was also very helpful. So thank all of you. I'm usually doing all this stuff by myself, so it was it was pretty nice to get some help. And thank you for those of you that drove all the way down to see it, and I'll just get right into it. So the title of this show is Ritual SpLaVCe, and if you can't pronounce that word, it's no problem because I made it up. It's I'm combining a spaceship with a slave ship as a way of talking about history. So the physical structure of the vessel kind of is loosely based on the Saturn V rocket that got us to the moon. And so it resembles the sort of cylindrical shape, but that's as close to it as I've gotten. And there are some markings on it. There's some black stripes on the Saturn V rocket that I have abstracted into these forms and lines you see on the wall. And the wall piece there is the exterior of one of the times that I built this ship. So what you're looking at and standing in right now is the 5th time that I've worked with this concept. The first time, like Dennis said, was at the Barry Whistler Gallery, and the ship was a lot smaller, but the panels that I used to build that ship are part of this installation. And there are 3 or 4 other iterations of the ship, and a lot of those materials are also part of this installation. So essentially, this ship is a mythical vessel that combines 2 other vessels, and it kind of expands across space and time. So it's both past, present, and future. And the passengers that I envision for this vessel are both historical figures, mythical figures, and I guess just imaginary travelers. But what they have in common and where they form a nexus is this idea of talking about the history of the African diaspora. I call these figures, these travelers, diasporanauts. And it's just kind of thinking about what it would feel like to be an enslaved person on a vessel headed for an unknown place, and then immediately find yourself transported onto a spaceship where people in the very distant future and people from the present are all your companion travelers. What are you talking about? How do you reference history? What does it say about where you're going? And so all these things come to play when I'm thinking about this, and I pay a lot of homage to the poets and the musicians and the artists that have inspired this idea. On some of the panels are named after Black astronauts. And I just want to consider this thing. Okay, so we're standing here in this old bank building at the port of Galveston that was also a slave port, that was also the point of the Emancipation Proclamation reaching Texas. And then if you travel 30 minutes west of here, it's where we built the Saturn V, where we launched one of the Saturn V rockets to the moon. So this kind of confluence of history and ideas about transformation and liberation and exploration all come to bear in this exhibition. One of my favorite filmmakers is Michel Gondry, because I really like the way that he plays with materials and is able to infuse really big ideas into really small spaces and really everyday objects. So some of the things that I'm doing here reflect that. For a long time growing up as a kid, or not growing up, but for a long time as an artist, I didn't understand why I was using reclaimed materials in my work, or why I was building these sort of wonky structures, but that made sense to me. I grew up in Liberia, West Africa. My dad is from the Kru tribe and my mom is from the Grebo tribe. And, but all the structures around me were, we didn't have a Home Depot growing up, but the engineers and technicians that built buildings and built community used materials in such innovative ways that, of course, it made sense to me that I was sort of connected to these ways of building, like using reclaimed material and creating things like this. So that's kind of a general idea of what this exhibition is about. We can get into the minutiae, and I'm here to answer some of those questions and curiosities, but essentially I want you to consider this space as kind of both a landing site, a way site on this travel of this mythical vessel, but also a point of origin. So if you imagine it as a landing site, then this ritual space becomes the place where everything stops and slows down. A community is sort of like building around these passengers, and you'll see some food that if you are from West Africa, you'll recognize, but if you're also like an international foodie, you'll see some things like palm oil and rice and cassava leaf and all these things that are essential, what I would consider essential for this kind of travel. So take a look around, ask me questions. If you have any pressing questions right now, I'll be happy to answer them. I can break down essentially some of the elements for you so it can demystify some of the space. I use the Afro pick in my work to represent Black people, and this figure is called the Traveler. There's the first figure I built of this scale is called the Diastronaut, and I see this figure as kind of a vessel in itself that embodies the souls and the emotions and the struggles of these travelers. So every point on that figure is a soul, a person, an idea that is kind of converging. And at the center of this space, under all those fish traps, is this object called a Nitian. It's a Kru sacred object that there's not a lot of written history about, so I am also learning about it as I go. But I see it as the sort of like essential force that brings all this stuff together. So you'll see it repeated in a lot of the shapes. And I've also kind of abstracted the Afro picks in some of the prints that I've made, because I see that as kind of the communication material for the ship. I see these like twists and turns and contortions as pulses that kind of both send and receive signals to this vessel. So that's essentially everything in a nutshell, but I'm happy to answer your questions.
That was Christopher Blay talking about their latest exposition, Ritual SpLaVCe, now showing at the Galveston Art Center from January 13th, 2024 till April 21st, 2024. You can now learn more about this exhibition at the Galveston Art Center at galvestonartcenter.org.